Hi everyone, this is Sophia from the Unfair Advantage, and we have a really special guest today from UT Austin. So, Alice, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Alice Ho. I'm a current sophomore at the University of Texas at Austin. I am a business major in management information systems. I'm also the founder of an international nonprofit called Girls in STEM, which is now in 34 chapters worldwide. And at UT, I serve on the leadership teams of the Texas Women in Business and also a spirit group called Texas Sweethearts.
That's really awesome that you founded a nonprofit organization with so many chapters.
Thank
So,
you.
for this call, the major goal of it is for you to break down your high school journey. So, what kind of student were you? What did you do for extracurriculars? And basically walk us through your freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year.
Yeah, so I had a unique high school experience since I spent my ninth and 10th grade years in a public education system. So I was in Jasper High School in Plano. And then for my junior and senior year, I was in the Texas Academy of Math and Science at UNT. So that's here in Denton, Texas. My freshman year, that's actually the year that I started my nonprofit. Growing up, I had always had an interest in STEM, and I kind of realized over the years a pattern of this experience was that I was always one of the few girls in the room, and I would feel unwelcome or intimidated, and I wanted to change that. So I wanted to create a space for myself, really, that I could feel welcome in a community that I felt comfortable to speak up in, and so that's how my nonprofit Girls in STEM was born, really just as a school club, and that really defined a big part of my high school journey. Um, both of my freshman and sophomore years, I was academically rigorous in terms of taking AP classes. I believe I took a majority of the ones that were available. I was in AP Human Geography, AP World History, um, and um, both of those years I was in top 10%, I believe. It's been a whole, I think, 4 or 5 years now since I even can recall that. But so it was really, I also, outside of Girls in STEM, competed in science fair, in which I competed at the state and national level. So that was also kind of a tangent interest that solidified my Girls in STEM brand. And so I then applied in the middle of my sophomore year to TAMS. So if you're not familiar with what TAMS is, it's kind of almost a boarding school where you live and take all of your classes at the University of North Texas in a dormitory on campus, and you are classified as a UNT undergraduate. So you have access to all the same resources that UNT students have. And there I conducted collegiate level research in the lab of biomedical engineering. And over the summer, I also did research at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School in their neurology lab. So I was really dipping my toes in a lot of different areas of STEM, kind of seeing what I liked and what worked. At TAMS, I was on the computer science track, so I took 4 semesters of computer science at TAMS. I continued competing in science fair. Leaving Plano ISD, I still continued to run Girls in STEM from the umbrella level, and that's when we really began to grow exponentially. We went from 4 chapters to 8 to 14 to 22, and 5.5 years later, we were in 34 chapters across 4 continents, which is really humbling from my perspective. So I think through all of these different experiences, a commonality was that I was figuring out what it is that I liked. So that going into college, I was choosing a major that would provide me with the most possibilities. And what that ended up taking shape as was I knew I had an interest in tech and in CS, but I also was fascinated by the entrepreneurial side of tech companies and that kind of startup mentality, that business industry side. And so that's what led me to choosing MIS, Management Information Systems, which is really the marriage of computer science and business. It is a technical major as well as a kind of high level market research and entrepreneurial insight major. So, all of the kind of different avenues that I explored in high school, none of them went to waste. Even though I'm not necessarily still doing biomedical engineering research per se, it provided me insight into what it is that I am studying now. So that's kind of a nutshell of my high school experience, and I'm open to answering any questions.
Yeah, so you said that you started your nonprofit freshman year of your high school. So how did you manage your time with academics and handling that nonprofit organization?
Yeah, so I think for all of us, time management is a work in progress. So in high school, I set time aside in my schedule to delegate towards my nonprofit because I knew that that was one of my priorities. So outside of class and studying for exams, up there in one of my pillars of my time was my nonprofit, and dedicating time to planning out meetings for it, planning out the growth model for my nonprofit. But when I think, my advice to high schoolers is, if you want something to come easily in terms of time management, it all comes down to doing something that you're genuinely interested in, because then it's easy. It doesn't feel like a chore or an obligation in terms of managing your time. It's something that you want to do. So for me, Girls in STEM was something I loved and something that didn't feel like work to me. And so time management kind of flowed naturally in terms of finding that fit among my schedules. I know a lot of high school students can be in a rigorous environment with a lot of pressure and a lot of AP classes. And so if you're doing an extracurricular that really inspires you and something that you're passionate about, it makes it all the more easy to manage your time.
And so you did your nonprofit organization plus your research. Did you do any other extracurriculars other than that?
So it was Girls in STEM, which consumed a majority of my time, and even today it still feels kind of like I'm a full-time student while being in a full-time job. So alongside research, a huge part of that research went towards competing in science fairs, which I would kind of consider as an extracurricular, which meant preparing for science fairs, putting together presentations, creating boards, accumulating your research and creating meaning out of it that could be tangible. And then away from school, a way that I kind of expressed my creativity was through dance. So I have been a dancer for the past 16 years. It's still a big hobby of mine, although it looks a little bit different in the college landscape. But I was a competitive dancer. I danced at a ballet studio as well as a folkloric studio, and I would compete in and around Texas and nationally as well. So I think it was very beneficial for me to have this creative and physical outlet so that I was maintaining my physical health and my mental health too in that way, which I really am grateful for looking back.
And going back to the nonprofit organization, how did you handle the rapid growth of it, starting from like 4 chapters and going all the way to 34?
Yeah, so it has been a 5.5-year process of failing forward, is how I would define it. I started Girls in STEM with no budget, no experience, no knowledge on how to conduct a meeting, maintain member loyalty. I was entering blindly, really. But along the way, I was really catering a curriculum that I myself would have wanted to see as a girl in STEM. And so over the years, as more girls joined the Jasper chapter, as girls left Jasper to their senior high schools and started chapters at those schools, I realized that in STEM, when I felt left out, felt outnumbered by the men in the room, I realized I was not alone in feeling alone. And that was kind of my driving force, is I want to create a space so that no other girl has to feel the ways that I felt when it came to feeling unwelcome in STEM. So it snowballed, really. It was creating this inspiring curriculum and valuable community for the girls in my school. And so much so that when they left the school or transferred to a different school or graduated or told their friends, it was something that kept on, even without my direct impact. Today, I have a full-time board. It's myself and 4 other women who oversee the umbrella operations. And what I mean by that is we host semester meetings for all of our founding officers in which we train them, we allow them to meet fellow officers to be inspired by other chapters, and then also continue to optimize what it is that we focus on. Our 3 pillars, guest speakers, STEM learning, and community service, kind of tie everything that it is that Girls in STEM focuses on. It ties it all together. But when it comes to managing the growth, that's kind of where my business education has come in, because growing a company, I learned, is very similar to scaling a nonprofit, because you have to develop new ways to reach more people. In Girls in STEM terms, our members are our customers, and you constantly have to adapt to changing times, like to coronavirus and to the changing tech landscape in terms of what we offer our members. So it has required me to really stay on my toes. And even now in my college schedule, I continue to have to, think about time management and my priorities, because Girls in STEM is up there in them.
And you also mentioned that you failed forwards for 5.5 years straight. So, how do you really deal with failure? Because I know a lot of students, they're perfectionists and they want everything to be perfect when, it's not all going to be perfect.
So, I think looking back on my high school experience, I always took failure or rejection kind of very personally. I internalized it. I always would compare myself. I thought that whenever I failed or faced rejection, I was behind other people, but that's not true. Every single person faces failure or rejection in ways that maybe they don't tell you about, that you don't hear about. So you kind of believe that you're the only one who is failing, and that's not true at all. And it's actually in those moments, in those experiences where I didn't get what I wanted or missed an opportunity that I learned. And there's a phrase that I love. It's sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And so I try to keep that in mind when it comes to, taking risks. I also have a piece of advice that I would, give to younger girls. So for those of you who are still in high school, I think society teaches girls to be perfect rather than to be brave. And I think it's time to change that narrative. It's okay to, try something before you think you're ready, to apply for something even if you don't think you're 100% qualified, because that's what it takes. It takes, making a leap of faith and trusting that you're going to end up where you're meant to end up, at a big scale or even in smaller opportunities too. And that's kind of also the narrative that I have to remind myself, that it's all up to, little moments of bravery where you take a risk, and inevitably some of those risks won't succeed. But each time you take that risk or try something new, you're planting a seed, and you will down the line see those come to fruition.
That's some awesome advice. And let's move back to your college admissions process. So, did you create a list of colleges you wanted to apply to?
Yeah, I did. So it was a pretty extensive list, just because I was still kind of exploring what it is that I wanted to do, because different schools have programs that are better at that specific school. So I kind of knew I really wanted to go to UT Austin, but I also had to, keep my options open. So I did apply to a lot of other Texas schools, to a number of out-of-state schools, like in California and on the East Coast. And eventually I ended up choosing UT Austin because of the strength of their business program and their MIS major, as well as the unique opportunities that UT Austin has to offer. And it's just incredible value for how affordable tuition is. Being in Austin, you're in this growing tech city. So many big tech companies are moving their headquarters to Austin. And really now being at UT Austin for 2 years, I can testify to why I'm so glad I chose UT in terms of the wealth of opportunities that are available to you the moment you step on campus. And I can, go further into what that selection process looked like in terms of narrowing down my school. But yes, I definitely did have a list of colleges going in, and I ended up fortunately coming to UT.
Yeah, it would be great if you talked about what factors contributed to your list and what made you cut some off.
Yeah, so I knew right off the bat that I wanted to be a little bit away from home. So I'm here in Dallas. I got into UT Dallas. Knew I wanted to be away from Dallas. I also got into Texas A&M, their business honors program. So I was considering that since it is a prestigious business honors program. I also got into some of the UC schools, and so that was also on my radar. But in terms of out-of-state tuition and the programs that they offered there, they didn't really compare to the strength of the UT Austin McCombs School of Business. So it was ultimately between the Texas A&M Business Honors Program, UT, and the UC schools. So I was ultimately pulled towards UT Austin's incredible McCombs program. Every student has an individually paired academic counselor and career counselor, and every semester they have career weeks where companies come on campus and are only there specifically for McCombs students, and they recruit heavily from this pool of very qualified students, and you're one of them when you're there. So I knew that kind of the culture of the school was a better fit for me than the other two options that I mentioned in terms of I would really define UT Austin as a campus culture that is very proactive, very passionate, very welcoming, progressive, and it's a very social life. There's a big social life presence at UT. I like to joke about how at UT there's no such thing as a stranger, just a friend that you have yet to meet. So, being in the outside looking in as a high school student, I could kind of tell that that is the campus life culture that I wanted to be a part of, more so than my other two options. And so that is really all those combined is how I chose UT.
So now that you got into UT, how do you transition from high school to college, and what were some of the hardest adjustments?
Yeah, so it is a big transition period, and anyone you talk to will tell you about how their first semester of freshman year was a roller coaster. I fortunately did have a little bit of a sneak peek to college life since I spent my junior and senior year kind of as a undergraduate. I lived in a dorm away from family, and there I had a little bit of training wheels. I was only an hour away from home, and I had to kind of learn how to be independent. There's not someone telling you what to do and when to do it, like how to manage your time. But in college, it's kind of like you're a fish out of water because suddenly there are so many things being thrown at you in terms of ways to spend your time, people you can hang out with, organizations that you can be involved in. It's a plethora of options. It's almost like you become overwhelmed with what it is that you want to do. And I certainly did face that challenge coming into UT. It was a student body at a greater scale than I had ever experienced before. UT has over 50,000 undergraduate students, and with that comes so many student organizations and student opportunities. And all of those are presented to you within the first 2 to 3 weeks on campus. And so it's just this kind of your head is on a swivel. And it really is up to you and knowing who it is that you want to become for you to kind of navigate through all of this sea of options into deciding what you want to put your time and energy towards. And so for me, I knew that I cared a lot about gender equity coming in from my 4 years of running Girls in STEM, which is how I took an interest in women in business at UT. And I knew I also wanted to have a social life at UT, which is why I applied for a competitive spirit group, which really also opened up my world and my network greatly. So I think that was the biggest challenge that I saw myself and my peers facing was suddenly it is just up to you what you want to do. It's not up to your parents, to your high school friend group, and the other factors that maybe have pressured you in the past. It is just up to you and you alone what type of life that you want to create for yourself in these 4 years. And that can be overwhelming, especially since you're in such a new environment. But it does come down to, again, taking risks. Maybe at the beginning you can join more clubs than you know you can manage, but as you figure out what it is that you want to do, you cut down. Or instead of doing more at the beginning, you can kind of take baby steps, join a few here and there, see how they work, see what your time schedule looks like, and slowly progress and join what it is that you discover you want to be involved in down the line through your 4 years. But really, that I think was the biggest challenge. But also, it leaves room for the greatest opportunity to rise out of it.
And a bit of a fun question. What do you love most about UTA that students who haven't gone there wouldn't know about it?
I think what I love most is the social network. I mentioned before I'm involved in a spirit group called Texas Sweethearts. We were founded in 1986, and since then we've developed, really important traditions to our organization. And what I mean by that is traditions that are deeply ingrained in UT history, that involve the Austin community, that involve UT traditions, like the tower, our turtle pond, Bevo. So what I would encourage you, if you're considering UT, is to really step out of your comfort zone and join these unique orgs to UT, because that's really where you can uncover what it is that UT itself has to offer that's different from other institutions when it comes to campus life. Immediately upon joining Texas Sweethearts, my universe kind of exploded. I was suddenly connected to so many other students that I would not have otherwise met who were in other spirit groups. So if you're not familiar with what a spirit group is, it's similar to Greek life, but it's more affordable. It's a little bit less intense. And, upon joining that spirit group, I had made, I think, over 100 friends in the span of a semester. And we all kind of became this one synonymous, welcoming community. And even today, I'm so close with every single one of them. And that was very much to my surprise as well. I didn't realize how much of a kind of culture and community of, compassion and of friendship could be fostered through just joining an org. And so that maybe is what I love a lot about UT that you wouldn't really expect if you weren't a student there.
And going back to your acceptance, what do you think was the main contributor for you getting accepted into UT Austin? And do you have any tips for students who are applying to UT Austin and want to get in?
Yeah, so my unique situation was that TAMS doesn't rank, and so we don't have the top 6% qualification. And so everyone from TAMS has to apply individually rather than anyone qualifying for auto admit. So I do think that my things that contributed to my success in the application process, I had rigorous academic scores. I had a 33 ACT score, and most of my classes were A's or A pluses, with a few varying factors here and there. I also, like I mentioned, took part in a lot of extracurriculars, which I think are really important because it is a holistic review. Because as an admissions counselor, when you're building a class, they're really looking to build a class where each student brings something unique to the table. Um, they're not looking for carbon copies of the perfect student. So whatever your story is, that's your strength. And my advice would be to harness that. Learn who you are and learn what it is that you want to communicate in the college application process. I think my story was that I was a girl interested in exploring STEM and tech. Through founding Girls in STEM, I really found my voice in the gender equity space, and I wanted to bring that to the table in MIS. And I've been able to do that during my time at UT Austin. So that was my story, and I encourage you to learn what that story is and then be unapologetic in telling it in your college application process, because that's what admissions officers will take away with them.
And I know you were at UTA for, did you say like 2 years around there? So you've been there before coronavirus started and after. So how was that transition between the in-person school and now online, and how is it different?
Yeah, so I was a freshman at UT Austin for almost 8 months before COVID-19 hit. So I had um, almost an entire regular freshman experience. I will say the biggest difference is kind of that social interaction that you get from every single day-to-day activity. So whether that is your in-person classes or even walking to class and walking down Speedway and meeting people while you're getting from place to place, and the tabling that's happening where you're getting to stop and talk to new organizations, that kind of has been taken away now that we're virtual, and that kind of organic aspect of meeting people in that traditional college setting now looks a little bit different. So virtually, I still, during the semester, I live on campus. I live in a non-UT sponsored housing, so it's a apartment right west of campus where a lot of students will live. And so I'm really grateful for that, since I still get to be in that college setting and in proximity to other college students and my friends. But I will say, virtually classes look and feel a little bit different. It might be a bit more difficult to engage in those classes, which I'm sure in high school you maybe can relate to. So it takes you being proactive on your own, taking initiative to go to your professor's office hours and take learning into your own hands, rather than being passive and waiting for like the teachers to accommodate for you or group study sessions to help you. It really does fall more on your hands. So I personally am grateful that I had almost a year of that in-person traditional college experience that I'm able to tie over now to my virtual college experience. It definitely does feel a bit more challenging since you are deprived of that traditional everyday social interaction. But I think I'm able to mitigate that by, going out of my way to seek, socially distanced opportunities to meet up with other people.
And do you have any advice for students who want to try to get out of their comfort zones? Because I know it may be a little hard to do so because we always like to stay in our bubbles.
Yeah, so I can definitely relate to that feeling of wanting to stay in your bubble. At the beginning of my TAMS experience, everyone lived in a dorm. We all, so we were all in McConnell Hall, and more often than not, I just stayed in my room because that was safe to me, that was comfortable to me. And then I realized, wait a minute, like no one's knocking on my door wanting to be my friend, because that's not how it works. So it really is kind of the price that you have to pay to get the most out of your college experience, is to step out of your comfort zone and to know that the best things don't come easily. So whether that's meeting new people, talking to strangers who, a year down the line, you'll realize you became friends, and knowing that it's all in the risk. So every single day in college, freshman year, I would encourage myself to talk to one new person every single day, whether that was in the dining hall, in my dorm wing, in an org. And that really, looking back, paid off, because I'm still in close contact with all of them. And really, a big part of the college experience is obviously your education, but also the people that you meet along the way. And sometimes it can feel scary to put yourself out of your comfort zone and talk to people who you don't know and maybe don't have at face value a lot in common with. But that's really where you can learn the most, is by meeting and interacting with people who are unlike yourself. And so my advice would just be to go for it and find ways that stepping out of your comfort zone can work for you. So it might look a little bit different from person to person, but it really does require that to make the most of your college experience.
So thank you for your time. We have a community that helps students with college, financial success, and career aspirations. And my last question would be, what is one piece of advice on anything you would like to give that you feel like would give students an unfair advantage because they're knowing it at such a young age?
Yeah, so I think kind of in line with my last piece of advice, something that I've noticed through my 2 years at UT is that there are going to be opportunities presented to you in the college level that you have never experienced or had any prior insight in your kind of high school level. So there are collegiate level orgs, collegiate level competitions that look and feel very different from a high school setting. And it's important to just apply. Even if you feel underqualified or know you're underqualified, just apply to as many and as high caliber of opportunities as you can, and you will, I guarantee you will find something that you enjoy and that works for you, that maybe you didn't know that you could obtain. And I honestly think the unfair advantage is just trying, because a lot of times college opportunities and organizations are simply looking for the people who are willing to, try new things and put themselves out of their comfort zone. So, me personally, it was a very big risk to apply to my spirit group, Texas Sweethearts. We are one of the most competitive spirit groups on campus. I didn't know anyone going into the process. It was a very rigorous 3-week application process that involved a lot of recruitment events, multiple interview rounds, all of which I didn't feel prepared for. But it was ultimately because I just tried that I ended up in the organization and now with all of the best friends that I have today. And so my unfair advantage would be to have that audacity, take up that space, and try new and challenging things that you maybe don't know are for you, but you really won't know until you take that chance. So if anything, that I feel like is the theme of my time here today, is to just try.
And with that amazing advice, we reached the end of this AMA call. And you can promote anything like your nonprofit and any of your socials.
Yeah, so my Instagram is at AliceHill _, which I'm always on. Also, feel free to check out my international nonprofit. If you are in high school, we would love for you to start a chapter. Our website is girlsinstemdfw.org, and our Instagram is @girlsinstem_. You can find us really on Google, anywhere. And if you are a girl who has an interest in STEM, Girls in STEM is perfect for you. And we'll be there every step of the way in helping you start a chapter or get involved, whatever that looks like for you. But, it's been a pleasure to be here today. I really enjoyed getting to speak with y'all and to speak with you, Sophia. So thank you so much.
Yes, this interview has been really insightful. I heard a lot of golden nuggets in it. And thank you so much for your time. And I'll see everyone in the next